Hi. Oh my goodness, I've had an amazing week. I am right now in my hotel room in Boston, and I wanted to give you a real recap on what I experienced this week, to inspire writers, to share the concerns about being othered, and just to talk about what I did this week. So if you follow me on Facebook, you would have noticed there's been a little bit less posts for me. I was away at a week-long writing class retreat, and the focus of it is using writing as a form of meditation, so as a form of Zen practice. So I personally am not Buddhist, and I do not necessarily follow Zen practices. I've always had struggles with meditation, but I have been following also this writer for a long time. So many of you have heard of Natalie Goldberg if you're in the writing circles. And so I went to her class this week in Maine, and it was divine intervention that made it happen, because there's no way I could have gotten there on my own. There's no way I would have jumped when I had the chance. And she probably will never be back at this location. Not saying that a location had any problems, but most of her retreats are not in this area. So it was nice to be able to see her in the the northeastern part of the country. She's usually in New Mexico, Santa Fe, and those other places. So Natalie Goldberg's main idea is, she's a Buddhist Zen practitioner, and her main thing is using writing as a form of meditation. So it gets you. She's written a number of books. She started her writing as a poet, moved on to writing. She wrote a novel, and then does a lot of writing around writing. And so her most famous book is Writing Down the Bones, but she has written 13 books or 15 books. I'm a little sketchy off on that. Anyway, so my friend convinced me in April to try to go, and by the grace of God and the help of Natalie and others, I was able to make it. So I was really excited, and my friend happens to be Filipino, so never in my mind did it make me think what the room would look like. And you guys have probably seen that there was a blog that went around sometime last year from a black woman about going to a writing conference and going there and seeing no faces that look like hers. Ta-da! That's essentially what happened. I think I saw all of one other person that was really identifiable as black, easy to identify. There were definitely a couple more people of color there. My class ultimately had 5 people of color, and we were a class of 30 people. One of which was more white presenting. Not that that's an issue, but that just gives you a little bit more of the lay of the land in which we were operating in. And so my group was supposed to be in silence for the first half of the day, for more than the first half of the day. Our words were supposed to be select. And so I really want to carry that a little bit into this video by really honing in to what happened, transpired, what I learned, and keep it as short as possible. So our goal was to write. And so when I walked into this retreat, I already had this sucker, and I brought this with me. This is making my luggage very heavy. But this is the manuscript, or the beginning parts of the manuscript I wrote when I was writing my last book, 2X Chromosomes with an Extra Shot of Melanin. Simultaneously, I was writing writing a memoir. And so I wrote this, and then I stopped to focus on the other book, and I've not been able to get back to this. But if you can see, there's blue pen, because the blue pen, I usually write in pencil, and I didn't have a pencil during this trip. So that means I did get back to editing it a little bit, and what came out of writing with her is sort of like just the whole goal sort of is using, I'm trying to see the right way to say this. I was at lunch and there was 2 tents. One that was a silent tent and another tent. But it was a rainstorm that day, or I have had a lot of physical problems walking around this trip. My knee was hurting a lot depending on how humid it was, how much pressure was in the air. My joints didn't love this trip. And so I sat in the talking tent, but I was not talking. And I sat across someone who is a practicing Buddhist, and we just were quiet eating our meal, and we kept getting pulled in by this conversation next to us. This one person just kept yapping. And I picked up my phone and I just wrote, "Funny how much people talk." And then she replied and say nothing, and we sort of smiled and continued on with our meal. And that's the main thing, is the reason why we were being in quiet was really to sit in our thoughts, to focus in on what's going on in here, to just bring silence to our lives a little bit. And then, so we did multiple forms of meditation, mostly sitting. So if you've seen my post on Facebook about my bottom hurting, we sat in uncomfortable chairs a lot. So it was sitting, it was walking, and it was writing. That was the workshop was True Secrets of Writing, The True Secrets of Writing, I think, and the subtitle was Sit, Walk, Write. So we did a lot of, we were in silence until 4 p.m. in silence. We sat with our thoughts, we kept a certain energy, and then we wrote to different prompts. So my cousin was amazing enough to buy me this book as a birthday present, and she came and saw me perform. And I sent her a picture last night at the conclusion of the day and said, "This is how far I've gone. If you can see, this is how much I wrote in 5 days." Because it wasn't even a full week. 5 days just in the workshops. And there's a page back here that's also used. And I got so nervous on Tuesday about how far I had made it through that I went from writing like this, if you can see, to writing like this, shoving as many words as I could on the page as to not run out of paper. So the whole idea was using that energy that we stored in, and being quiet and just listening, and also observing. We spent a lot of time observing our surroundings, what was happening, what were we hearing. We were hearing crickets, we were hearing birds, we were hearing water off in the distance, we were hearing traffic, we were hearing light conversation because we were sort of removed. What were we hearing? We were hearing a lawnmower a lot too. And using all of that, as we got quiet in our environment, we were able to more identify things in specificity, and then using that into our writing. And I, for one, will go, yeah, and so then I went to sleep. But I could have said, and then I laid down in the soft mattress that welcomed me. It's a lot more interesting than, and then I went to sleep. So it's a challenge to sort of like really hone in on some details, not to give too much detail, but to hone in on them. So we've had different writing prompts that push those types of things. One, just writing for 10 minutes, writing for 15 minutes, writing for 20 minutes. And then we had one day where we wrote for 40 minutes straight. And then it became about, just describing everything around us. So there's trees. Are the trees turning colors? Are they turning already? And in Maine, I'm in Boston, I'm looking out the window now, and there are some trees already starting to turn. But in Maine, they're slowly starting to change already as well. So what are the trees doing? What color is that image in front of you? What flower is that? Really bringing you into my world as a writer. So it was really inspiring. I wrote a lot, and it's giving me some new ends into this book. So there's at least one chapter I'm going to go back and look at using what I wrote this week and seeing if I can take that angle into the story instead of the angle I took originally. there's some new detail that I'm pushing into it, something to make this memoir a little bit more interesting to you when you finally get it. So that was mostly the writing process. It was great. The writing was great. It was so great to write again, and I haven't done this in so long. To just write, I mean, who fills up a book that fast? I mean, it is a small book. If you look at my phone and that, it is a small book in comparison. Yes, that's my book covers right there. It's a small book, but to get, again, that far into it, I'm definitely like 2/3 of the way into this book. And I will finish it. So that's some of the amazing of the writing part of it. The problem is that I was like I said, I was the only black person in my class. And while it didn't start off as an issue in my group, there was a point that I was doing the sitting meditation. I had just done the walking. I was doing the sitting meditation in preparation to doing the homework assignment for the afternoon. And these guys came in and they stood the whole hallway. If I could show you, and there's pictures, but if I could show you how long that hallway was and how in front of every door there were seats, you would understand that it was absurd that granted, I didn't realize I was sitting in front of the stairway, but like they came in while I'm looking like I'm sleeping, essentially, because no one can tell I'm really like meditating for sleeping. I'm sitting there in silence, and they come in and they stand right in front of me, and one guy has his backside towards me, and they're talking loudly, so they just didn't respect the fact that someone was there in silence. And then another guy came in and his clone sat next to me. There was all these tables. There was another table. There were other seats to be had. He sat at the table with me and didn't ask if he could share. Never, just taking up space, never acknowledging that I was there. And then the whole class came, and then one guy came in and turned the fan and not asking if anyone was using it or if it mattered. Like, there was a lot of a lack of consideration for me being in this space, quiet, looking like I was sleeping originally. I wasn't talking to them. I wasn't in their class, and they just dominated the entire space like they had to be there. And while it could just be that they were inconsiderate, ultimately it reads a different way, because I don't believe that behavior would have happened the same way, with the lack of consideration or the lack of acknowledgement of a human being being there, if I did not look the way I did. So then I wrote a thing about that, because I was so upset by it, and because the topic that were given was so much depends upon. And so I ended up, because they're around me and annoying me, and I can't be in this tranquil place that I wanted to be in, I'm writing, and so much depends upon your perspective. And so I wrote, like, I am the only black person here, and it depends upon your perspective, because I'm seeing things that no one even is thinking is rude or wrong or has a racial motivation or intention or anything. And then so every evening, every afternoon, we came back together, we would share one thing we've written. And so, scared, because again, super minority in this moment, debating between, am I black or am I a person or a student, which rights do I have, I decided to share this piece to my class. And my friend, who again is Filipino, came up to me, gave me a high five and said thank you and all that other stuff. And then all these caring allies came up and wanted to talk to me. And then some people were like, I really want to have lunch with you. And so they got me to sit with them, but then they don't realize that they didn't talk with me, really. The only time they gave me a space to talk in is when I talked about their religion. And it's because I'm so affiliated and acquainted with it. So when it was talking about the black issues, the racism, they talked because they knew it all. They knew it all, and didn't make space for the person who was sharing their hurt. Like, I'm almost about to cry. So it was very frustrating to have this conversation, and this one person latched on to me like we were really cool, and we had a long conversation about stuff and understanding, but something about her just didn't sit right with me. And then the next morning happened, and I mean, I decided this time, unlike the struggle I had at NYU, I decided this time that the answer was that I get to be both. That I get to be both a black person and a student, and you're gonna have to live with me. And if you have to be uncomfortable, then you're gonna have to be uncomfortable, because I'm not gonna be the only one uncomfortable in this moment. But it took me years to get there, and still years to own that, right? But the next morning, that friend, that ally friend who was so drawn to me, kept talking at me and to me about everything she knew about blackness and the struggle she had with dealing with different type of black people and all this stuff. She sat there. We got an assignment to draw, to sketch with words someone. So instead of sketching, we were describing them with no real full sentences, but like green and black sundress with diagonal stripes, looking like a sunburst, with a black jacket, like sort of that, a black cardigan, like that's what we would say. So I was looking at my friend and I tried to do her, but she had actually locked on to a different subject, and therefore when her subject left, she left me. And so I was like, oh well, what am I gonna do? So I'm looking around because I didn't really want to walk outside. I didn't want to put my shoes back on to walk around the neighborhood, especially given the joints issues. And then I look up and that same friend and allied person walks in front of me, gives me her backside, and laughs, and then walks away. She used a hurt and point of vulnerability that was not a joke. She used my pain as a joke. Yeah. So I ran into a lot of would-be good doers, and I can tell you half of those people ain't about this life. But the most magical thing happened. So our first night, we had an assignment where we were supposed to, we had two assignments: describe yourself, which was a physical description, and tell us who you are. So I read the physical description one in the group sometime earlier, but I didn't do the describe. Never read the describe yourself, because other things kept coming up that so much depends upon, and some other stuff, and then it shifted around and whatever. So I had this tell us who you are thing. And so at the end of the week, all the different classes, about 6 different classes there, mostly photography or film, lighting groups, and the writing group got to read one entry quickly. And so we no one in my class had heard me read this one, so I read tell us who you are. But the night before, or earlier in that day, I had shared with just like 2 people in my class, one of my sillier ones that I wrote. And so she was like, oh, I really want to share this with you, I'm nervous, is it okay? And I'm sure she was scared when I didn't really like jump in and reply. Not because I was trying to give her approval, I was trying to understand one statement she made. So I was like, well, what was that statement? What are you referring to? And then she answered, and I was like, oh, this is great. Like, I'm really glad. We're not supposed to share good, bad, whatever, but I was like, this is important and it's necessary and people need to hear it. And then so we ended up being next door to each other. And so we both walked back to our rooms after another long conversation about stuff. And as we both put our key in the door, I turned to her and said, consider reading it tonight. And she goes, okay, I will. So then it worked out that we were in the middle of the group of my classmates. I went and she went, and the night was magical. The room is mostly people who look like this and not people who look like this. Like, majority don't look like me. And so it's a big thing to stand up in front of a group of people and say, I am a descendant of Africans who were enslaved, as well as a descendant of Massa. That that blood runs in me, as does it stain my name. So it's a big thing to do that. But I had, again, gotten to the point that I am here. I take up space and exist. And I wasn't going to read the one about the guy giving me his backside, because that would have been a lot more offensive and put me a little bit more at risk. But you're going to acknowledge who I am and that my story, my humanity matters. And so that's what I did. And then right behind me came this other classmate. And she read, and I mean, I already heard it, right? But she read this piece of Claire that's making me cry now. And it was just about her desire to be a better ally, and not knowing how to do it. And the best she's ever done is correct her dad, but wanting to do more for this conversation. And between her and between a few other classmates that I did get to bond with, actually the two of them were international, so therefore it was a different perspective. And there was just other really cool people who helped. I didn't have to explain my blackness, I didn't have to explain my struggle, but I also got to just be me. And I finally was like, yo, like I'm not twisting my tongue for you to be acceptable. I am not hiding my truth from you to be accepted. I'm not. And while I may have to do that at work, I'm not doing that in my life or my vacation where I'm supposed to be relaxing. I'm going to be authentically me as best I can, and you're going to deal with it. And so some people, we were just like, one person said something to me, she goes, I was wondering if I could have your card. And I was like, no, you ain't one of those people I like. And I said it as a joke because I had said I had only given my card to people that I really liked. And she goes, I was wondering if I could have one. I was like, nah, you can't have one. You just like the rest. No. And we laughed about that because we could. But us joking was very different than the woman who gave me her backside thinking that was a joke. No, that was insulting. That was injury upon injury. That is not how you be an ally. Talking over people, telling them how you know how things are, or just having them at your table but not including them in the conversation, that is not how you be an ally. That's not how you listen. So yeah, I'm so grateful for the people that I did get to bond with. You can't throw everyone out. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is far longer than it meant to be. I even had a whole list of things I wanted to make sure I covered. But, do better. Do better. And so my last suggestion, do better if you about this life. Learn from this. And if you're a writer, feel free to write crap. I wrote words down that I may say them, I don't write them. They are written there, and they're fun, and they're juicy, and it's terrible. Some of this writing is terrible, but one of the things we talked about was this idea of this other entity. My teacher calls it monkey mind. I'm sure it's coming from some other practice. Ed Theater called it cop in the head. It's that voice that tells you, you're a bad writer, you can't do this, you suck, don't do it, you're not good, no one likes this. That's that voice that's naysaying you. And while you can use that to go, you think so? I'm gonna prove you otherwise. You can also, so it can push you forward. It's usually trying to drag you back. And the most important thing is don't let it. Go forward, keep pushing. And that shows up everywhere. And Ed Theater is cop in the head because it's about the cop that used to beat you in the corner that now beats you inside your head. So therefore, the idea is any aspect of your life, when you keep hearing this voice, keep going. Don't stop. Keep trying. You get as many no's you definitely get no's when you don't try it. But you may get a yes if you do. So write crap, because the piece that I wrote that I'm going to try to change and weave into this manuscript is also, there's things that are not good, but you write the crap, you come back to it later, read it out loud so you can really hear it, and then find the things that are good. And if it's nothing good, you can toss it and keep going. But look for the good things. Look for the nuggets. Use that. Keep going on. Keep writing. Keep telling your story. Keep being unapologetic. And if you get something else from this, if it's offensive to you, probably means you need to listen more and do better.